So yeah, I did go by, I visited Ridley. She's okay. She's not thrilled. She's bored, I think. She looked a little bored. She was making granny squares, lots of them. Like she made two or three just while I was sitting there talking to her. I brought her a Starbucks and her mushroom cat print, so she had it. But she should be back soon. So, oh, Drew, I put yours on the table back there by Grace. I don't know where you're sitting, but I put your mushroom cap. All right, so today we are starting our intro to plants. So we have moved out of protists and now we're into plants, and it just keeps going from here. Things get more complex from here. Yeah. All right, so your homework looked something like so, and basically your answers should have aligned accordingly. There you go. All right, good. Yes.
It said I got almost all of them wrong, but I knew what it was. I just still
Yeah, I corrected them all. I went through it and corrected those. You guys know I don't count for spelling, so yeah.
At least you must have a word bank.
We don't even have it. You don't
No,
have
you
it.
got
Okay.
You know what you're doing. Yeah, figure out things in life, man. Figure it out. All right. So here we go. So what's the color of life? That might seem like a weird question because life can be almost any color, but Caitlin, what do you think of? Mostly green. If you imagined yourself surrounded by life, what color would you see? Gray, he says. I see a lot of green. So you probably saw a lot of green. You could have imagined yourself in a forest, in a jungle, lots of green. And that's the color of plants, right? So, introduction to plants. Plants are multicellular. They're eukaryotic, which means they have what? Eukaryotes of plant, Caitlin? You got it. Yep. Did it just escape me? Yeah, membrane bound nucleus is your eukaryotes. Remember that one. That's one for a life. Okay. So, and they're made they have cell walls that are made of what? What are the cell walls made of in plants? Yes, Lucas. Cellulose. Lucas is right. Yes. Remember what they are made of in fungus? In a fungus? It's not cellulose, remember? Chitin. Very good. Yes. All right. So different material. And what do we call cellulose in our day-to-day life? Talking about food.
Fiber?
Fiber. Yes. Somebody says you need more fiber. They mean eat more plant cell walls. Yeah, basically. All right. So, and they develop from multicellular embryos and carry out photosynthesis using green pigments, chlorophyll A and chlorophyll B. By the way, what is in that image? Do you know what that is? Do you know?
I guess berries.
Not berries. So look at the leaves.
The flower from a pine tree.
Oh, close. Yep. It's part of a pine. Yeah. So this is a conifer. And they don't make flowers, but they make cones. That's what the male cones look like. Those big brown ones that you step on that hurt your feet, those are the female cones. The male cones are the little ones. Sometimes the little pine tree ones look like little worms. You ever seen them? Yeah, like that. Oh, what do plants need? So the lives of plants revolve around the need for certain things and the movement of water and nutrients throughout the plant. Caitlin?
All of them?
Yeah, sure.
Sunlight, gas exchange, water, and minerals.
There you go. Sunlight, water, minerals, gas exchange. These are all necessary for plants to live. Okay, now how do plants evolve? The first plants evolve from an organism, much like the multicellular. What's in the picture? What is it? Kelp, which is what? An algae. There you go. So, from multicellular green algae, we talked about how green algae can be chlorophytes or charophytes, and the charophytes were more closely related to plants. We mentioned that last week. By the way, did you see I was wearing snow? I am so hopeful. I don't know if y'all notice this, but I'm very hopeful. Anyway, so you get algae like this type of algae, which is your green algae that's charophyte, it's kelp, that time. This is how we're moving out of the protists and algae into plants, right? That's right on your evolutionary line right there. So as you see, your charophytes over here, right? These are your most basic, and we're going to branch off of that to make our modern day plants. So we have bryophytes, we have seedless vascular plants, and then we have gymnosperms and angiosperms. These are your big chunks, all right? And we're going to divide them up accordingly and talk about them in that order, in the order in which they evolved, because that's also sort of aligns with their order of complexity. So when we talk about chlorophyta and charophyta, these are your algae slash plant situation, kind of on that line. There may be some argument about how to categorize them, but we'll look at them here as a seedless, non-vascular aquatic plant. But when we talk about plants in general, we're going to talk about land plants for the most part, for most of today's lesson. So for these guys, the green algae are large, informal grouping of algae consisting of chlorophyta, charophyta, streptophyta. Remember when we looked at the different types of bacteria? We saw a streptococci and a streptobacillus, and they were arranged a certain way. And we said strep must mean, do you remember? Like a chain. So you'll kind of see that with the way these are structured, right? And they're now placed in separate divisions. There are about how many species of green algae? What do you think? Anybody want to guess how many species of green algae? Eunice?
1,000.
Thousands, Andrew?
2,000.
2,000? Caitlin, I'll take you.
10,000.
10,000, she says. 22,000 species of green algae. That's a lot, right? And many species live most of their lives as single cells, while other species form, what do we call them when they join together? Does anybody know? So colonies is the word we're looking for. Long filaments or highly differentiated macroscopic seaweeds, like that kelp we just saw. It was differentiated, right? It had stems, it had leaves, right? The land plants or leaf-like structures, the land plants or embryophytes are thought to have emerged from, what do we say? From your charophytes. All right, so how do we classify? Here's where we get into our land plants. So these are our big classifications, our overarching classifications, and we're going to learn the scientific names for each of these classifications. But our first big one are our non-vascular plants. These plants have no tubal system within their bodies to carry water, nutrients, minerals, or anything like that. Everything is sort of absorbed, right? And then we have vascular plants. And vascular plants are going to be subdivided into seedless and seeded. And seeded is further subdivided into non-flowering and flowering. Okay, so this is your general structure for how we categorize plants. What is this? Does anybody know what that is in the middle? Oh, Isabella would know it, I bet. Isabella would be like, I know what that is. So that is what is called a fiddlehead. So when a fern emerges from the ground and it starts to grow up, it is all curled up on itself like that. And if you've ever seen a violin or a fiddle, the end of the neck is kind of turned around like that. It sort of spirals in on itself, almost like a nautilus shell. Same idea. So all of the individual little leaves are curled up and the stem itself is curled up and it just unfurls.
What came first, the fiddle or the fiddlehead?
I believe the fiddle came first and they named the fiddlehead after the fiddle because it's the head of the fiddle, not the whole fiddle. But that's a great question. So then we go from that to our seeded and those are subdivided into flowering and non-flowering. So we're going to start with bryophyta. Bryophyta are our non-vascular plants. They have no seeds. And primarily it's stuff like moss. So here is your mnemonic device for bryophyta. Bryce likes his mossy carpet. There's Bryce. Everybody get Bryce in your head. Bryce, a little fat rat. He is out there enjoying the beautiful day. Yes, he's got his little hands behind his neck and he is just chilling on his mossy carpet. You can keep this image in your head, stare at it for a minute. You will remember that bryophyta are your mosses, your seedless vascular plants. There's our little Bryce. Isn't he cute? I almost want to tickle his belly. He's very cute. He's just chilling there. So the life cycles of bryophytes, though, are for real weird. All right, so for real weird. And it's actually not what they do is really not uncommon because a lot of other plant life will take the same sort of process and procedure, but it's just very different from what you're familiar with when it comes to how sexual reproduction works. So bryophytes have life cycles that depend on what? Well, we're getting there. Yeah, we're getting there. But they have to have, do you know? Water. They have to have water. Okay, they have to have water for reproduction because they have no vascular tissue and they can draw up water by osmosis only a few centimeters above the ground. And you see that nice big water drop there. They have to have water to reproduce. Now, I've got a great video in a minute that'll explain to you why that is, or it kind of show you. It's really kind of cool. So, the types of bryophytes include what? Does anybody know? You have your list of them? Mosses is one. Got two other big ones. So it's your mosses, your liverworts, and your hornworts. This would be a liverwort in this picture. Lovely name, liverwort. Oh, yeah. In bryophytes, what's going to be your dominant recognizable stage of life? Do you know? I think this may be where you were headed. This is gametophyte, all right? So, and it's the stage that carries out most of your photosynthesis. So they have this alternation of generations things going on. And we're not going to get like overly deep in the weeds about it, but I want you to understand that it is a process and it's different from probably what you're used to. So your mosses are, you've seen moss, right? You know what it looks like. They have these little green flat structures. They resemble true leaves, but they're not. They absorb water and nutrients, and some of them have little branches, right? And they have traits that are adaptations to dry land, such as stomata present on the stems of the sporophyte. Mosses are anchored to the substrate by what? They don't have roots. Does anybody know what they're called? They look like roots. They function like roots. So they're called rhizoids. And so they will anchor the moss to the tree, to the rock, to the ground, to the brick, to whatever it's growing on. And they originate from the base of the gametophyte. The moss life cycle follows a pattern of alternation of generations where gametophytes form male and female gametophores, which fertilize to form the sporophyte. Spores are released from the sporophyte to produce new gametophytes. So that's kind of your process of how it works. Concentric tissue around the mouth of the capsule. So the capsule is, back when we looked, right, this is the capsule, okay? So you've got a little triangular, kind of, okay. Everybody seen a Demogorgon face? All right, imagine that as three folds instead of like five or whatever it is. And same idea, right? That's kind of how they open up. So they release their spores. All right, and then you have liverworts and hornworts. So the liverworts are named thusly because their body shape is representative of kind of how the lobes of a liver are shaped. So they've been named after human organs, interestingly. So they're liverworts. And then your hornworts look like this. They have these like pipe-like structures. See how they're more like stalks or pipes. So your gametophyte stage is your dominant stage in both liverworts and hornworts. However, liverwort sporophytes do not contain stomata, while hornwort sporophytes do. The life cycle of liverworts and hornworts follows alternation of generations. Spores germinate into gametophytes. The zygote develops into a sporophyte that releases spores, and then the spores produce new gametophytes. Liverworts develop short, small sporophytes, whereas hornworts develop long, slender sporophytes. To aid in spore dispersal, liverworts use elaters, whereas hornworts use pseudoelaters. This is sort of like these little bowl things. I'll show you. And liverworts and hornworts can reproduce asexually through fragmentation of leaves. So if a leaf breaks, it can start to grow a new organism. So if you look here on the liverwort, you see the little cups, right? So those little cups contain the next generation. And when the water hits them, they splash out and hit the ground. And that's how it works. So the little cups drop from one structure, the little the little next generation babies, right, drop from one structure into the little bowl, and then they wait for water to splash it out. It's quite a process, right? So this man is going to explain this to you in a video aptly called The Sex Lives of Bryophytes. But it's pretty good. Like, he will take you into the forest and he will show you how all these things
Don't forget to hit subscribe.
Okay, dude. That is funny. All right, so looking at your binder work, if it's true, write true. If it's false, change the word. So for number one, both grasses and mosses are examples of plants. Kenna, she says true. She's correct. Green algae are now considered to be protists. True or false? You say true? True? True. Right. Plants, it says here. So this is where it's on that line. The book answer wants it to be plants, but I would argue that not everybody would agree with the book answer. So this is one of those on that line situations. So I'm not going to ask you that question because that could go either way. Most plants are either parasites or saprobes. What do we say, Lucas?
No.
No, he says only a few is what we're looking for. A few. Number 4, in plants, chlorophyll A and B are located in chloroplasts.
True.
Says true. Is right. Okay, besides oxygen, plants need water and carbon dioxide for photosynthesis. True. Sunlight as well. They need sunlight. Actually, not oxygen, but carbon dioxide. So that one is sunlight. Everybody got that one? All right. Plants require oxygen for cellular respiration. Kinda true, she says. False, false. We have an argument. We have an argument. Oh, I love it. We have an argument. That, oh. So if you're doing cellular respiration, then it's got to be oxygen. But primarily plants will do photosynthesis, which is carbon dioxide. So that's a bit of a weird question. Land plants evolved with structures that promote water loss. Is that the word we want here? Everybody, clearly, no, we want to limit our water loss, right? Plants usually take in water and minerals through their leaves. True? False? 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 True? False? True? Roots, through their roots. We're aiming for roots for that. Okay, now, ancestors of land plants lived in what? Drew? Water. Yep. All right. The oldest fossils of plants are roughly how old, Yusuf? 300 million, he says. Yusuf, Eunice? 500 million? Okay, we're going around 500, 425 million. These are all good guesses. We're getting real close. All right. The greatest challenge faced by early plants was obtaining what? Claire. Oxygen, she says. Everybody agree, disagree? Water. All right. And land plants, early land plants. Yep. Early land plants obtained enough water because they grew close to the ground in what kind of places, Lucas?
Yeah.
Yeah, nice wet, damp places. All right. Describe why biologists now classify, here we go, green algae as plants. So this is this argumentative one. So green algae have cells and photosynthetic pigments identical to those of plants. They also have reproductive cycles similar to those of plants. Finally, studies of genomes of green algae suggest they are a part of the plant kingdom. So this is one of those ones that, now, today they're plants, tomorrow they may be not plants. You know what I mean? But at the publishing of this book, they're plants. So we can ride with plants, but I'm not going to ask you that question because it's so on the line. And I'm also not going to tell you that you're wrong if you're saying they're algae, because they are algae, but they're also plant-like algae. Such fun. Describe 3 characteristics of plants that help them meet demands of life on land. Asher. Photosynthesis, but they were doing that in the water too, but that's a good one. All right, what else, Kenna? Roots, okay. Yusuf? Vascular tissue, all right, and Barrett? Leaves, all right, these are good answers. Oh, wait, that one goes here, goes here. So yeah, more resistant to drying rays of the sun, capable of conserving water, more capable of reproducing without water. That's a big one, reproduction without water. Like our little bryophytes that we just looked at, they need the water, right? But bigger trees and other plants don't necessarily require that for their reproduction. So here's your 5 groups, and that's a terrible copy, but that's how it is. And they would be embryo formation, true water conducting tissue, seeds, and flowers enclosed in fruit. Seeds enclosed in fruit. All right, so what is the shift between haploid and diploid phases in the sexual life cycle of a plant called? Alternation of generations. So we've been through that. Do know that alternation of generations is especially important for bryophytes. So your diagram should have looked something like so. What evolutionary trend is observable in the relative stage sizes and stages in the life cycles of plants, starting with green algae and ending with seed plants? So the trend here is going to be as plants evolve, their relative size of the two stages of their life cycle change. The gametophyte or haploid stage got smaller and the sporophyte or diploid stage got larger. The only multicellular bodies of green algae are gametophytes. Mosses have relatively large gametophytes and smaller sporophytes. Ferns have small gametophyte, larger sporophyte. Seed plants have smaller gametophyte, which is contained within a sporophyte tissue. So basically, your alternation of generations sort of shifted from haploid to diploid overall. Would a type of algae that has only chlorophyll A be considered a plant? What do you think? What do we think? What do we think? So it says no, because plants have both A and B. So this is part of the reason why algae is being reclassified, A and B. So let's see. Correct words. Alga is a Latin word for what? Does anybody know, Lucas? Seaweed, he says? Yes. Large mats of green algae lived during what period? More than 550 million years ago. Okay. Cambrian? Cambrian. Yep. Good. Green algae is mostly aquatic, but some live in what kind of areas on land? They're going to live in moist or wet or damp areas. Yep. Green algae. Sorry, wrong one. What is an example of a single-celled green alga? Does anybody have one? So it'd be something like this guy, which I think is Chlamydomonas? Chlamydomonas? Uh-huh. Of green alga that are reliable to survive freezing or cold tradition. The blank, sorry, of green alga. What do you think? There you go. The zygotes are able to survive. Right. All right. What is a colonial green alga shaped like a filament? Do we have that one? Anybody have that one? So that is Spirogyra. I love that one. Spirogyra is fun. Spirogyra is one of those ones that sometimes they'll put it. I think that's one of the ones they put in food sometimes. Like superfood stuff. Spirogyra. That's a fun one. Volvox. We had that last week in lab and we weren't really able to see them under the microscope, but I had them on my big microscope. They're still hard to see. But they're green algae and shows some cell what? So some specialization. You're starting to get some specialization of cells, which is your bridge to beginning to develop tissues that are differentiated, right? Differentiated tissues are what make a more complex organism. So if it's true, write true. If it's false, change the word. Mosses and their relatives belong to a group called sporophytes. Eunice? That's right. We're on bryophytes. The moss life cycle is dependent on fertile soil. What's the word we're looking for here, Yusuf?
False. Things like water.
Water. We're looking for water. Yeah. Bryophytes stay small because they lack vascular tissue. Is that true or false, everyone?
True.
That is true. The gametophyte is the dominant stage of the bryophytes. Is that true or false? Yeah. There we go. That is true. Bryophytes must live in places where there is standing water for at least part of the year because for fertilization to occur, eggs must swim.
False.
False. What's swimming? Yeah, their sperm is flagellated, just like human sperm is flagellated. It has to whip its little tail to get where it's going, right? The egg-producing organisms of bryophytes are called Antheridia. Archegonia. When moss spores germinate, it grows into a sporangium.
I want to say true.
You want to say true? Does anybody want to say anything different? He wants to say true. It grows into the gametophyte. The gametophyte's what grows. That's the little part you see. And then the sporophyte's like the little filament with the little guy on top, right? So if you were to label it, it would look like so. Your gametophyte is the part of the moss that you see as the green part. That's the part where you go, oh, look, it's moss. You recognize it as moss. That is haploid. right? Your diploid part is up here. It's the little filament with the little guy on top. That's your sporophyte, and that is your diploid part. Okay, so what's vascular tissue? What you got?
Specialized for conducting water.
Yeah, specialized for moving water and other materials. If you were to compare and contrast, you would get both xylem and phloem, which we're getting to in a minute, but both contain long cells through which fluids can move. Tubular cells are stacked end to end, but they are different in that xylem carries water and minerals absorbed from the roots to the shoots, and phloem goes the opposite direction. And we'll get to that in a minute. Dominant stage of your life cycle of ferns is what? Anybody? That's going to be your sporophyte is your dominant stage in ferns. And your parts of a fern would look like so. And this is your little dude that lives on the ground, your little gametophyte, and this is your sporophyte. This is what you recognize as a fern, right? And what type of plant reproductive cell, spore or gamete, is better adapted for dispersing, spreading bryophytes and ferns to other places? The answer there would be spores are better adapted for dispersing or spreading mosses and ferns on land. They're small, lightweight, easily carried away by wind or water. All right, so now we're going to look at our next group. We just looked at non-vascular plants, right? Bryophytes, non-vascular. Now we're moving into vascular. And our first type of vascular plant are those without seeds. And this is Phyllocinophyta. So you can remember Phyllocinophyta by remembering that Felicity likes her fiddle. What did I say? Those little, yeah, the fiddlehead fern. Remember I stopped and showed you that little fiddlehead? That's how a fern comes out. So Felicity, standing in front of her ferns with her little fiddle, get her little image in your head. That should help you remember that Phyllocinophyta is your mnemonic device. Felicity likes ferns. She likes her fiddle. Sorry, she likes her fiddle and stands in front of the ferns. She likes her fiddle. We could have named her Fern, but that wouldn't have helped you with Phyllocinophyta. So Felicity. Felicity likes her fiddle. She's cute in a little green dress in front of her ferns, right? All right. So both forms of vascular tissue, what are our two forms of vascular tissue called? We have two main types. Anybody know? Xylem and phloem. And fluids can move throughout the plant body, even against the force of gravity. So your xylem, all right, your xylem is generally located in your innermost part of your stem. And this will transport water, nutrients, minerals from the roots to the shoots. Your xylem goes up. You can think of your xylem like elevator situation. It is headed up as a general rule. Your phloem tends to be located on the exterior part. If you've ever had a tree, like a section of tree trunk that you've looked at that's been chopped, there's bark and then there's a thin layer of tissue before you get to the true wood. That thin layer of tissue is your phloem. And it's easy to remember which one is, and phloem takes from the leaves and everywhere else and brings it down, right? And it's easy to remember which is which because phloem, things flow. And things only flow in one direction, people. Things don't flow up. Things flow down, right? So if you can remember that the phloem is everything coming from the leaves and the other parts of the plant down to the roots, your xylem is going to be the opposite, roots to shoots, right? So if xylem is roots to shoots, phloem is everything else moving around. So it takes all those sugars and whatnot that the leaves make, it brings them all down to where they need to be. And that process of moving minerals and water and materials throughout a plant is called translocation, which makes perfect sense because it's changing or moving location, translocation, moving location, right? That makes perfect sense. So if you look here, that's your xylem right there, and then your phloem would be on the exterior part in this particular slide. So our types of seedless vascular plants. Does anybody know? We have three main types. So they're going to be club mosses, horsetails, and ferns. Horsetails are a little harder to spot in nature. I haven't spotted but so many out walking around. But club moss like that, I got a ton of that back there in the woods. I see club moss all the time. Club moss isn't a moss. It's more like a fern. It's a seedless vascular plant. It's called a club moss, but it's not a moss. All right, so there's another little fiddlehead situation going on. That one's curled all around, right? So ferns and other vascular plants have a life cycle in which the diploid sporophyte is your dominant stage. So when you're looking at a fern, that big leaf is your diploid sporophyte. Now, this is bizarre, okay? You're going to need to focus here. This is basically your life cycle of a fern. We'll warn you beforehand, this is weird, but it's great. It shows what's going on. I don't know what possessed somebody to do it like this, but it's really good. It's really good.
It's a crippled peanut.
Yeah, it's questionable what it is, but if you watch, it it's a great question, right? It's a great question. Like, what happened there? But that's exactly how it works, right? Exactly how it works. Interesting. So now we're moving on to seeded vascular plants. Does anybody know what that is? That plant? I have one. It's one of my favorites. I wanted one forever. So it's a beauty berry. That's the actual color of the berries. It looks unreal. When it's growing in the spring, it doesn't look real. Like the color is so vibrant. It looks unnatural, but it's beautiful. So that's a beauty berry, an American beauty berry. So what adaptations do seeded vascular plants need to move to drier land? Adaptations that allow seeded plants to reproduce in areas without water include what? Or the transfer of sperm by pollination and protection of embryos and seeds. So what we're looking for here is flowers or cones, all right? And we're going to divide our seeded vascular plants into those with cones and those with flowers. And we're going to start with gymnosperms, who are our seeded non-flowering plants. Everybody recognizes that, right? When you see a cone like that, that's the female cone. The male cones are the little short squishy ones, right? Sometimes you spot them on the ground, they look like a caterpillar or something for a minute till you realize they're not. Now, when we look at the etymology here, gymnosperm means naked seed. Now, here's how you're going to remember that it means naked seed. If we stopped and cut that word between the N and the O, what sport starts Gymn? Gymnastics. And how was gymnastics? What was the purpose of gymnastics? What did it evolve from? There were no women in gymnastics when it evolved. It was solely a men's sport, though now it's female dominated. What was it for?
It was training for combat.
Training for the military. And how did they train?
Naked.
Naked! Absolutely! A bunch of naked Greek men swinging themselves over, this is a horse and this is a bar. This is how they did it. It was military training in the nude because they're Greek. You know, it's really, I mean, what else can we say? It was the Greeks, like ancient Greeks. That's what they did. So that, if you see like gymnasium, gymnastics, the root word of that is naked. That's what that is. So naked seeds is Drew's like, thanks. So naked seed is gymnosperm. And the gymnasium is the place where you exercise naked. Hopefully not anymore. But now it'll get you kicked out. But back in the day, it was what you did. Now it'll get you arrested. So let's not do that anymore. So your mnemonic device for this one is that Jim likes ice cream cones. Did you remember Jim is spelled differently here, but it's still Jim. And he really does enjoy his little cones. So if you can remember Jim goes with cones, then you can remember gymnosperms are your seeded vascular plants that keep their seeds in cones, which means they don't make flowers. These are non-flowering. All right. And they're broken into 4 main categories. Your first one are neophytes. These are like these little woody plants. There's only 70 species of these, not very many. Okay, they're few and far between. And they do have some elements that are similar to flowering plants, but they're not flowering plants. They are gymnosperms. Cycads, the one you may be most familiar with, and it's a very common house plant. It's called a sago palm. It's not a palm, it's actually a cycad. But cycads can look very similar to palms. So they're woody. They produce seeds with no fruit. They have cones like that. They look similar to palm trees where they have leaves at the crown, and where their leaves fall off, they scar the trunk. Like if you've ever looked at a palm tree where it loses leaves, it has scars on the trunk the whole way up. That's why their trunks look the way they do, right? But they're not that closely related to palm trees at all. But they resemble them in some ways. Their stems are usually unbranched, fallen leaves, leave the scars, like I said. Internally, stems are made up of soft storage tissue rather than a hard wood. And their roots They call these coralloid roots because their roots look like coral. If you've ever seen the way coral looks, you've probably never seen a plant with roots that look like coral. But cycad's roots, if you were to dig them up and look at them, it's more like a structure like coral. Then we have ginkgos. Anybody ever seen a ginkgo? Pretty common. People plant them ornamentally. There is one species of ginkgo, one, ginkgo biloba. That's it. There used to be more, but they have all since gone extinct. There's one species of ginkgo. There is a ginkgo on Sterling. Somebody has one in their front yard, and every fall it is the brightest golden yellow color. They are deciduous, which is weird because most of these cycads are not deciduous. I mean, most of these, gymnosperms, like cycads and neophytes and conifers, are not deciduous. They don't drop their leaves. They don't change color. Ginkgos change color and drop their leaves, but they are the brightest yellow gold. Like it's one of the it's prettiest tree in the neighborhood. I get excited for it every year to change color because I like to drive past it. It's so pretty. So, they're different in that there's only one of them and that they're deciduous. And then we have conifers, and y'all are very familiar with these. So Pinophyta is a group made up of living and fossil gymnosperms that have needle-shaped evergreen leaves attached to the scales of a woody bracketed cone. We've seen the cones, the little woody cones, the female cones. And like I said, gymnosperm literally means naked seed. So you can't see them when the cones are green and closed. You don't see the seeds, but when they dry and they open like that, the seeds just kind of fall out. They're usually in like a little paper thin envelope. There's not much to it if you've ever seen them, not much. The male cones are the little, like I said, they're little yellow ones. They look almost like little caterpillars or little worms. And when you see all of that pollen in the spring, like the pollen that you see, a lot of the pollen that you see is coming from the conifers because their pollen grains are larger than a lot of the flowering plants, and that's why it looks so thick and so heavy. It's more visible to a lot of people. So, what are gymnosperms? All right, so now we're going to talk about our angiosperms. So these are our seeded plants, but those with true flowers and fruit. Now, your mnemonic device for this one is Angie likes flowers. That one's easy to remember. Angie likes to look at Angie with her little flowers. Doesn't she look happy with her little flowers? Okay, put her little face in your little head. Angie likes flowers. Angiosperms are flowering plants. There you go. So how do angiosperms reproduce? Angiosperms have unique reproductive structures. What do we call those? So they have flowers. Flowers contain ovaries, which surround and protect the seeds. This would be the center structure in a hibiscus flower. If you've ever seen a hibiscus, they look a lot like this. We're going to look at a diagram in a minute of one, but you can see up close what it looks like. So here it is, not quite as up close, but this is the same kind of flower. And so when you're looking, we're going to do this in lab in a couple weeks. We're going to dissect flowers and get a really good look at all of these structures. So this is a hibiscus. You start at the top. You see the little fuzzy white, little fuzzy pink deals. They're pink in this flower. They're not pink in every flower. So that is the style, and the stigma is at the top. There's a little hole there. There's actually a hole. And there's a tube that leads all the way down that pistil into that ovary. In that ovary are ovules, and the ovules, when fertilized, will become seeds. The ovary will become the fruit. Now, the anthers there are the little yellowy balls at the tips of those long filaments. The anthers contain the pollen. The pollen is the male gamete, and then the female gamete is all the way down here in the ovary. So flowers can reproduce sexually by self-pollinating, and they can also reproduce sexually by cross-pollinating with other plants. We talked about this back when we talked about Mendel. Remember, he cross-pollinated all the pea plants, and he would cut the anthers off of some so that they wouldn't self-pollinate, because he wanted to be sure he was getting pollen from a different plant. So it's that same process. And you can see then in these two images what those parts differentiate into once that those ovules have been fertilized. So the ovary becomes the apple, or the ovary becomes the tomato, and you can see like the ovules there, the same pattern here. Exactly the same. They just grow into the fruit. What is the advantage of putting your seeds inside a fruit? Why? Why would we do that? Why would you put your seeds inside of an apple? Just
Animals eat them and spread the seeds.
Yes, animals eat them and not only spread the seeds, but poop out the seeds in a nice package full of fertilizer. What a great idea, right? And not only that, but they're moving them to other places, right? They're spreading out their seeds. There's various means of seed dispersal. So some are in fruits like this that are particularly tasty are meant to be eaten and spread by animals. There are some you'll find seeds that have burrs that are meant to attach to fur or clothes and be moved, right? Then there are, like in a minute we'll look, but those guys that spin down from the maple trees that a lot of us will call helicopters. Yes, right? Dandelions, you blow those seeds and they float away. Coconuts are meant to float in water. They're very buoyant. So there's all kinds of methods for dispersing seeds, but that is the purpose of putting it in something edible is dispersal. And even if that apple just falls to the ground and nobody eats it, the apple contains nutrients that will help the seeds grow, right? So here are your main categories. You got fleshy fruits and dry fruits. And then in your dry fruits, you have some that are within capsules, legumes, follicles, and some that are not. So these are the guys up here that need to pop open in order for you to get your seeds out. So peas, you're probably very familiar with, peas in a pod. Mimosa trees that are technically a weed around here. They're not indigenous, but they sure are pretty. The ones with the pink puffball flowers on them, like little puff flowers, right? And they come out in the spring, and their seeds come in little pods like that. So does a redbud. Actually, redbud makes little seeds with pods in them like that. So you'll see that. And then this is what a dandelion seed looks like. If you blow it off the flower itself, there's a seed here, and then this little puff of fiber at the top that helps it float. Milkweed is the same way. Those are the ones that we always, as a kid, call them fairies, and we try and catch them. They just float along. Milkweed does that. Here's your maple helicopters, right? And then things like corn and nuts that are in maybe like a harder case. And then down here you have fleshy fruits. So things like cucumbers or berries like tomatoes, apples, that type of thing. And you can see here, here's a sort of cladogram type deal of how they're related to one another. So lots of different types of fruit. So we have two main types of seeds. We have dicots and monocots, and they're named for the number of seed leaves or cotyledons. By seed leaves, we mean if you can take that seed and split it into two pieces, those are each a seed. They're called a seed leaf, not like a leaf like you see on a plant, like out there, but the actual seed. So I want you to think about a peanut. Like a peanut looks like, like this, but you can split the peanut in half, right? You can split that peanut right in half. So those are each a seed leaf. Same thing with beans. Like you can do that with kidney beans or navy beans or lima beans, right? They'll split in half like that. So the way you can tell monocots from dicots is the seed. And if you're not looking at the seed, there are other characteristics they share. So this is corn, for example. It's got a single cotyledon, a single seed leaf. But look at, there's a bean, and it has two. Okay. Now the leaves on a monocot are going to be these long, straight, blade-shaped leaves with parallel veins, whereas dicots are going to have branched veins. If you happen to have a flower at hand, monocots are going to have flower parts in multiples of 3, and dicots will have flower parts in multiples of 4 or 5. Their stems, they're going to have vascular tissue bundled throughout the stem in a monocot, and in a dicot, it's going to be more arranged in rings. And then when it comes to their roots, you can have a lot of monocots, have spread out roots, and a lot of dicots have this one main root. Now, we had daffodils bloom this week. Are we going to guess? What are we going to guess? Can you count the petals? There are 6. Yeah. So what do we think? Who says monocot? And who says dicot? Okay, so we have petals in multiples of 3. So that is a clue. And then anybody ever seen the leaves on a daffodil? They just stick straight up out of the ground, right? They're just straight and they have veins that are parallel. So you're looking at a monocot, right? There you go. All right, now, what are life cycles of plants? There are 3 categories of plant lifespans. So this is when you start working on your yard: annual, biennial, and perennial. And this has to do with when they die, how long they live, how often they bloom. So annual growth, biennial growth, and perennial growth. Your annuals are flowering plants that complete a whole life cycle in one growing season. So this is stuff like, what are those? I can't tell even what those are in that picture. Maybe a type of begonia. Yeah. And so these are the guys that you plant in your yard. And then at the end of the season, you toss out the plant because it's done pretty much. It's not going to make any more flowers. It's just going to sit there. Biennials are the flowering plants that, under the right conditions, will complete their growth cycle in 2 seasons. So you get 2 years worth of flowers and prettiness out of those plants. And perennials are plants that are non-woody, and they flower under normal conditions, have a lifespan of 3 or more years. So they keep going. So if you want something in your yard that's going to come back every year for the first couple years, then you want a perennial. If you just want to make plant your planting bed with something pretty that you can just get rid of at the end of the season, an annual is fine for that. And the annuals are on sale every spring when you go to Home Depot or Lowe's and you see like all those pretty flowers that are out to be planted in people's gardens. A lot of those are annuals because people want to put them out because they look really pretty. So now we have to also talk about how we can divide plants up as woody and herbaceous or herbaceous. So woody plants have stems that live for several years, add height, new growth, height and width each year. Herbaceous plants have stems that die back. So examples of herbaceous stems are these, the green ones. The little green ones you can smush with your fingers or snap with your fingers, not hard. Woody stems are your thick, stiff ones like this that you can, actual branches, twigs, things of that sort. Now, let's look at this. If it will load, there you go. Come on. All right, so basically that's your whole process for how a plant would sexually reproduce without a different plant. Like you can have cross-pollination or you can have self-pollination. All right, so the world's oldest tree, single tree, has a name. Does anybody know the name of the world's oldest tree? Do you know it?
Isn't it in Greece? It's a cypress tree or something
Yeah.
like that.
Do you know the name of the tree? It has a name. Do you know it? No, not the kind of tree. It actually has a name. Like the tree has been named. Do you know?
The oldest.
The oldest tree. So it's named Methuselah. Does anybody know why?
I think he lived like somewhere. According to the Bible, Methuselah was the oldest man.
There you go. Yeah, we are making a biblical literary reference. Methuselah in the Bible lived to be 969 years old, the longest lifespan recorded. So he was the son of Enoch, father of Lamech, grandfather of Noah. Long life is interpreted in the Bible as a symbol of God's patience and mercy toward a sinful world before the flood. So that is who Methuselah is in literature. So the tree has been named for Methuselah because it's so old.
Isn't the tree like location of the tree kept private or secret?
We're getting there. So here it is. This is Methuselah. That bristlecone they referenced, right?
I thought it was one like.
But then there's
I thought it was one like Greece that like.
there is one over that way that's pretty old, but I think the agreement now is Methuselah in California is the bristlecone. That's the oldest tree, oldest known
They haven't
tree.
dated it.
Now,
It's like safe.
this one's a little different. Tallest tree. Name already came up once today. It is a redwood. And what's its name? Does anybody remember? They mentioned it, remember? Hyperion. Very good, Drew. Hyperion is our tallest tree. Hyperion was a Greek titan of heavenly light, son of Oranos and Gaia. And he was the father of Helios, who is the sun, Eos, who is the dawn, Selene, who is the moon, and sometimes overshadowed by his son Helios. Hyperion was a significant figure associated with light. He was found on the side of the fought on the side of the Titans against Zeus before being imprisoned. Oh no, poor dude. But this is Hyperion, the name of this tree. Now, this is what's fun about Hyperion. The exact location of Hyperion is supposed to be a secret, but you can Google it. It's not that big of a secret. You are not allowed to visit Hyperion. Not allowed. So in 2022, the Redwood Park superintendent closed the entire area around the tree, citing devastation of the habitat surrounding Hyperion because everybody wanted to visit. So visitors are coming and they're trampling the ground, and the ferns are dying, and all of that sort of ecosystem that is supposed to surround this tree that has kept it alive for so long and made it grow so tall was getting damaged. So the superintendent of the park that it's in said, no more visiting Hyperion. And we're going to make its location a secret that is on the internet. So, yeah. Measures to protect Hyperion were officially implemented in 2022. National Park Service closed access to it. And anyone who gets too close, you can go to jail for 6 months or get fined $5,000 for trying to visit the world's tallest tree, because we are trying to keep it alive and not brutalize it. So it's illegal to know its location. Our oldest tree. Now California has our tallest tree. And now we have the widest tree. Biggest trunk. Anybody know its name?
No, but it says there's everyone now in it.
Oh, now, you caught it. You write that down. There you go.
On the tallest tree one too.
Oh, did it? Oh, okay, because they were copied and pasted. We'll write that down. So, does anybody know the name for the world's widest tree? You know it?
Goliath.
Goliath is a great guess. That would be a great guess. I'll give you a hint. Do you know, Drew?
Oh, I don't remember that one, but I was just gonna. But there's Hyperion used to have a brother called General Sherman that was taller than it was, but it was cut down for sport.
Actually, this one is General Sherman. This tree is General Sherman. Yes. Now I take that as a personal affront to the state of Georgia. Who is General Sherman? Confederate general. Actually, no, not Confederate. Union general.
Didn't he burn down Atlanta?
He burned all of Atlanta. Union general who came down here, burned all of Atlanta from Atlanta to Savannah, basically the entire corridor that goes down I-20. This man burned it all, right? Well, he's a great American figure, right? But unless you live here and you're like, yeah, I mean, maybe that's how we got the war won, but at the same time, the things that were destroyed. Yes.
Is he fat?
No, he's not fat.
Then why
Why they named the world's first tree after him? First off, let me ask y'all, do you remember, those older of you in the group might remember, but about 10 years ago, where 485 come together caught fire, and it burned the whole.
There was a homeless guy.
Yeah, there was a homeless encampment under the overpass, and they were like living down there, but they also had conduit for fiber on reels, and that stuff's like petroleum-based plastic. And anyway, some of the people living there, the unhoused people, had fires to keep warm, and boom, the entire interstate caught on fire. Some of the best memes were pictures of wanted, who started the fire, and they were all pictures of Sherman. I thought it was absolutely genius. Like, yes, if Atlanta's on fire, it's him, right? Okay, so
They rebuilt it in like a couple days.
they did. They rebuilt it it was a few months. It was kind of amazing considering how long it takes to get road work done on the regular. The fact that they were able to snap that guy back, and there were all of those images of like the General Lee, the Duke boys car, like, Dukes of Hazzard car, like flying over the gap. I was like, this is so Georgia of us. Anyway, So General William Tecumseh Sherman was an American soldier, businessman, and author who served as a Union Army general during the Civil War. His famous March to the Sea and other campaigns through the South, known for their harsh total war tactics that targeted Confederate infrastructure and resources to undermine their ability to fight and lower their morale. After the war, he was promoted to General of the Army before retiring. So yeah, we've named this giant tree after just one Union soldier general. Don't know why he got it over. I don't know why it's not, Ulysses S. Grant or, any of the other things it could have been. So here is General Sherman. And when you see people compared to the big tree, ginormous, standing next, anybody ever been to a redwood forest? Have you been? You been? Do you remember? You remember when we went through California through the redwoods? No, you were little at the time. Yeah, it's immense. It's so different from forests here. Just absolutely beautiful. All right, so let's look at importance of seeds. Acorns, pine nuts, and beans are examples of seeds, she says. Seeds is right. The living plant within a seed, the early developmental stage of what phase of the plant life cycle? Do we know? The living plant within a seed represents the early developmental stage of the sporophyte phase of a plant cycle. In seed formation, fertilization does not require what? Do we know? Water. Remember, for your bryophytes, you have to have water for fertilization. But when we get into our and for our ferns too, there has to be some degree of water. But when you get more so for the bryophytes, but when you get into these seeded plants, we don't need water anymore. The gametophytes usually develop in reproductive structures. What are what? Which are our two options for our yeah. Okay, within that, okay, yeah, angiosperms would have this, but it's going to be either in cones or in flowers. So our seeds are going to be either in cones or in flowers. So your Venn diagram would look something like this. Gymnosperms have cones, angiosperms have flowers, and seed fertilization, you have pollen grains, pollination, seed coats, all of those things are going to occur in both. So in which part of the pine tree are the pollen grains produced? What you got?
Oh,
The cones. Which cones?
see,
Seed cones? Pollen grains? They're going to be in your pollen cones, in your the male cones. The seed cones are the female cones. Those big ones that you step on that hurt your feet, or that the squirrel, you ever see the squirrels sit in the tree and eat them, right? They eat the seeds out of the pine cones and they drop all those little green, when they're still green, they do it, right? They drop all the little sharp, pointy parts on the ground. Which is one entire male gametophyte? What? Which is one entire male gametophyte of a gymnosperm? This is going to be your pollen grain. The structures of gymnosperms in which female gametophytes develop are called what? What you got?
Ovules.
Ovules, he says. Yes. How much time does the conifer life cycle typically take to complete? What you got? 2 years, she says. Anybody agree, disagree with Kenna? Yep, 2 years. It's typically 2 years for a life cycle for a conifer. What's a conifer? The trees with cones on them, specifically with cones, right? Not all gymnosperms are conifers because we had cycads, we had neophytes, and we had ginkgos. But for all the ones like the pine trees and all those are conifers, right? In gymnosperm reproduction, which of these takes the place of water in the transfer of sperm to eggs? Do we know? It's going to be little pollen tubes. Remember the same thing happened in that video where we watched with the flower, right? The little pollen, when the pollen landed on top of the pistil at the stigma, it created a tube that ran all the way down the style of the pistil into the ovary to the ovule to fertilize the seed. So the actual pollen grain itself grew a tube. So your dominant phase of your life cycle, seed plants, sporophyte, yada, yada, yeah. So your big answer for this one is, well, I'll read the whole question. The dominant phase of the life cycle for seed plants is the sporophyte, the spore-producing plant. Like all plants, seed plants produce spores. However, the spores are never released from the body of the sporophyte. The spores remain inside the cones of gymnosperms and flowers of angiosperms, where they develop into male and female gametophytes. In what ways has this change in the plant life cycle been an evolutionary advantage to seed plants as they adapted to life on land? Because the spores of seed plants are not released, gametophytes that develop from the spores are protected from drying out because the tissues drying out by the tissues of the sporophyte. This enables seed plants to survive and reproduce in environments that have limited amounts of water. The gametophytes do not dry out and can still complete reproductive process without having to wait for an abundance of water for the transfer of sperm to eggs. Additionally, since the zygote also remains within the structure of the sporophyte, cones and gymnosperms and flowers and angiosperms, the embryo that develops from it is protected from drying out. The embryo and tissues that surround it and protect it become a seed, which is also able to survive in dry conditions for long periods of time. Some seeds can survive for many, many, many years, right? And others don't do as well. And then there are certain processes that we, when we're marketing seeds, we dry them and go through certain processes to make sure you can put them in those little paper envelopes and they work real well. All right. So what's a bryophyte?
Rice lakes and
What was he laying on?
moss plants.
Mossy blanket. Bryce likes his mossy blanket. So a bryophyte is what type of plant? Yeah.
It's a moss and then hornworts or liverworts.
Correct. They are seedless vascular plants. Mosses, hornworts, liverworts. That's a bryophyte. What is a phyllocinophyte? A fern. And how do you remember that? Somebody with a fiddle? Who had the fiddle, Kenna? Felicity liked her fiddle. So your ferns and your phyllocinophytes are your seedless. We're still seedless. So we were seedless non-vascular. Now we're seedless vascular. So this is ferns, horsetails, club mosses, correct? Right. All right. What's a gymnosperm?
Jim likes cones.
Jim likes his ice cream cone, right? So what kind of plants are these? What now?
Naked seeds.
Naked seeds, right? Pine, yeah. They are vascular plants, but they don't have, no, they don't have flowers. Okay. Non-flowering, seeded vascular plants. So we have seedless, non-vascular, seedless, vascular, seeded vascular without flowers. And the last one, what's an angiosperm? What's the last one? What is it?
Angie likes flowers.
Angie likes flowers. So what kind of plants are these? Flowering plants, plants with flowers and fruit. Stare at those dudes. Get them in your brain. These are your guys. These are your friends. Bryce, Jim, Felicity, and Angie are your buddies. Okay, very good. Y'all did great. All right, so keep an eye on your next week. If there is a weather problem next week or the week after or any other week, it will come out as an announcement, which is like an email that everybody should get. And just keep your eyes on it and we'll everybody wave to who's not here. Tyler, Isabella, and Ridley. Hello. Yeah, that is everybody that's not here, right? Yep. All right. Oh, did you finish yours already?
Harry Potter.